In the end, maybe a little bit disappointing. The steam sort of ran out. Well, the market ran out of steam, I should say, towards the end.
In the last 4 weeks, we've seen the longest winning streak since January. And if we have a look at the intraday graph, as you mentioned, James, we started off on a very strong note, but ended off on a very weak one. You could say that we started off the day on optimism around central bank action, especially around the People's Bank of China after those weak China numbers last week. But we really ended on concerns about global growth once again. And the trigger for that was Japanese second quarter GDP numbers. They came in much softer than expected, 1.4% on an annualized basis. The market was expecting 2.3%. I guess just once again reinforcing that the rest of the world isn't immune from what's happening in Europe. So once again, concerns about global growth really is how we ended the session. All in all, though, once again we saw that rotation from the defensives into some of the higher beta areas. So the materials space was a standout, up by 1.1%, but altogether a focus on the earnings season here in Australia buffered us somewhat from some of the losses that we saw around the region. We saw the Korean Kospi down by 0.7% and the Shanghai Composite down by 0.8%, but some fantastic performances on market today from earnings season. Downer EDI was a highlight, up by 11%. JB Hi-Fi was up by almost 6%, but on the downside we saw UGL losing almost 11%, and we also saw James Hardie also losing some ground, down by about 6% today.
Out on equities, is it the expectation or hope, whichever way you want to put it, of central bank stimulus that is sort of driving this rotation we're seeing on markets out of those defensive into some of those, as you say, high beta cyclicals?
But once again, at this stage where we see a double-edged sword, in that the worse the economic data becomes, the more the market seems to expect sort of the white knight, the knight in shining armour to come, and that's the central banks, and throw some money at the market. And really that I guess is helping the markets and sentiment as well. But really this winning streak has been going on for 4 weeks now. We're in our 5th week of possible gains for the market. So it's the longest streak that we have seen since January. And I think part of it is that we are seeing the European worries fading to the background of the market's worries. Now that's not that shouldn't necessarily be the case because the problems are still there, but the market seems to be, I guess, more confident and hopeful that we will see some sort of central bank action. And that really seemed to start off with Mario Draghi's speech, where he said he would do anything he could to help support the euro, and that seems to have continued onwards. Now we have seen verbal interaction. The market's still waiting for some actual actions coming through from the European Central Bank, and if we do start to see some of those moves come through, then this rally could be continued. But if we don't see those moves, then once again we could see that focus on the very fragile situation in Europe.
Stories around, so we're going to be covering a little bit of detail later on, but I wanted to touch on Newcrest. It's obviously the biggest gold play on our market, widely held, has in many instances widely disappointed some shareholders as well. What did you make of their result today?
I think a lot of Newcrest story can be read through the share price. In the last year, we've seen the stock down by 40%, but over the last 3 months, we have started to see a bounce back in the stock, and we've seen quite a good performance. In fact, just in the last month, we've seen the shares rising 15%. So it does look like the market's supporting that turnaround that we've seen in production. No huge problems, and they are coming out and they're meeting or they're beating forecasts, and that's a good news story from Newcrest. It is a high-quality, low-cost producer, and if we have a look at this profit result of $1.1 billion, it was slightly higher than what we were expecting. Not only that, if we have a look at the interim dividend, which was 12 cents, I guess there had been expectations that the final dividend would match that at 12 cents, but instead we've seen a final dividend of 23 cents. So returning a larger share of profits to shareholders, and that of course goes down well as well. So if we have a look at Newcrest, yes, they have acquired some problems from that merger that they saw with Lahire and some of those assets, but some of those problems now seem to be behind them, and the market really focusing in on the fact that it is a low-cost producer. We've seen higher gold prices over the last year, that it has helped Newcrest, and its growth profile through some of its projects is looking pretty good as well. So a good day for Newcrest today.